okay, right now, um, what percentage of your sensory perceptions, I guess sensory perceptions is redundant, what percentage of your perceptions are either created by or mediated by human beings as opposed to created by non-humans? For myself, and I'm counting pets as mediated by humans because they're under our control. In this moment, 100%, no, I'm looking through a window. That means it's mediated, though. Okay, so 100% of what I see, hear, smell is either of human origin or is mediated by humans. If I were outside, I could at least see and hear and smell the forest. But in this moment, everything. I mean, there's a cat over here who's clamoring around in a box, and I'm hearing it clamoring in something made by a human. And the point that he's getting at is that when everything you perceive has been created by or mediated by humans, you're in sensory deprivation, and when you're in sensory deprivation, you begin to hallucinate. And these hallucinations are what he calls most of our ideologies. And this really makes sense. Another way to say this is if everything you perceive is created by or mediated by humans, you can come to believe that humans are the only ones who matter. Mm-hmm. And that was an incredibly important point for me. You can come to believe. Another way to say this in a different way having to do with food is if your experience, not what you think intellectually, but if your experience is that your food comes from the grocery store and your water comes from the tap, you'll identify with that system and you will defend to the death that system because your life depends on it. If, on the other hand, your experience is that your food comes from a grocery store, comes from the land, and your water comes from a river, you'll defend to the death those because your life depends on it. And this is so, this permeates every part of our being, every part of everything. A few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I wrote this book called Dreams. And one part of it that sticks out in my head is that at one point Sam Harris is talking about how basically any Christian from the 15th century might know everything there is to know about Christianity, which is a crazy thing for him to say right then, but would be an ignoramus on every other subject. And I really objected to this strongly in the book. And let's leave off the whole Christianity thing and just take anybody from the 15th century and compare them now. And yes, we can look up on Google and find out what the nearest star is, and we can find out all these things about what the sun's composition is, but can you navigate by the stars? Can you find your way home by the stars? No. And probably the average person in the 15th century, if they were a mile and a half from home, they look up at the sky and they know where to go. And could you, and I'm not putting you on the spot because I sure as hell couldn't.
Right,
yeah. Could you, if you were out in a forest right now, could you find some dinner? No.
I would probably make somebody's dinner.
Exactly. Okay, so there you go. Could you figure out whether to avoid this bear or not? And so the point is that our knowledge has, I don't think increased, it's changed, and it's become less personally held and less direct. I mean, for God's sake, even 120 years ago, most people, at least rural people, would have known how to build a chicken coop or maybe a house. And I sure as hell couldn't. Yeah. The other day, I had a bear put a paw through some rotting wood in a shed, and I had to nail some boards over it. And that's pretty much. I was very proud of myself for this great constructive achievement of finding 2 rotting boards and pounding 3 nails into each one.
Yeah.
But 100 years ago, that would have been, or like my mom, she died a year and a half ago, and she knew how. I mean, sewing was absolutely second nature to her, and I've read about how sewing as a skill, both with a machine and by hand, are completely collapsing because of cheap clothing. And so there's all sorts of. Another way to say, there's two more stories on this. Sorry if I'm rambling too much.
No, not at all.
One is that and I mean, I write books, so of course I'm in favor of literacy.
Yes.
But they've done studies that when people become literate, both individually and as a group, their memory goes down. Their capacity to remember goes down. This makes perfect sense because you no longer have to remember a phone number. You no longer have to remember a thing. You no longer have to remember anything because you can write it down. And so there are some trade-offs. And another example of that is when I was a kid, I had this weird gift that I could add and multiply phenomenally fast. And so, how old are you?
I'm 24.
Oh God, you wouldn't certainly not remember this, but you may have seen in movies. You know the old style cash register, like you see at a grocery store.
Oh, sure, yeah, I've seen it in movies.
In movies, so I grew up with those, and at the grocery store and at the fabric store and other places, when I'm maybe 7 and 8, I was a little showman, or my mom would show me off or whatever. That I would stand there at the cash register as they were doing the groceries, and I would say the numbers out loud. So we buy bananas for however much they were, 14 cents, and then bread for 27 cents. That makes 41, and I would just add it up out loud. And the checkers would call people from all over the store. You got to come see this. Okay, so I had this real gift. I could do this, and you know when I lost it. When I got my first calculator for a birthday present or for whatever present when I was about in 7th grade. That's about when calculators came out for the nerds, and I started using the calculator, and I lost the muscles to do it.
Yeah.
And the point is that I outsourced. Oh, I love that. I outsourced arithmetic.
Yeah.
And so my point is that all of these things, even oh God, the other day I was okay. I don't have a cell phone.
Good for you.
Thanks. The other day I was at the store and I lost my wallet. I had my wallet. I lost my car key. I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I realized that because I have an address book at home, I don't actually know anybody's phone number. It was like,
right.
I realized I can't even call anybody to come pick me up. Eventually, it ends up that somebody had turned in my key and everything was fine. But for like 10 minutes, I was like, I don't know what to do.
Well, it speaks to this weird infantilization almost of all of us, where it's like on the one hand you can rationalize it to yourself and be like, oh well, this is a division of labor, and I don't know where my food comes from. I don't know how to build my own house. I don't know how to basically all the natural things that humans had to do to stay alive for thousands of years. We don't have to do those things anymore. We don't have to create heat for our own homes. Like I don't know if you saw Michael Bloomberg talking about he was talking about farmers. He goes, being a farmer is the easiest job in the world. I could teach anybody to do that. Like you dig a hole in the ground, put a seed in it, and pour some water on it. It's like
billionaire Michael Bloomberg.
Yes, yeah. And
wait, just a second,
please.
I have to tell you, I have been a farmer. I mean, I have spent. Okay, apart from writing, that's the other job I've done as an adult. Is oh my God, that's